The song Happiness in Tech is about the excess that is going on in the tech field. It's not about working with computers. Everyone's working with computers these days, and if they're not, they soon will work with computers. So this is a different thing. This is about the excess. This is about, I guess, what you would call uh, disparity. If I'm thinking forward, like, will everybody be getting that? Like, obviously not in terms of distribution of wealth. Like, you can't have everyone be above average, make above average pay. Uh, but if I think forward, if you, if I'm thinking about artificial intelligence, if we had that, we don't have it. We have machine learning, which is it sounds like just a different name for the same thing, but it's not. It's it's limited. It doesn't mimic the way we think, and it's very limited in what it can do. Uh, but if we had that, if we had artificial intelligence, then we would use it to basically push all the people working in tech out of the field and replace it with computers. Then no one would get like this excess, except for maybe the stockholders, or I don't know, people that are not really in the field. Uh, and so if that happens, then no one will be there, and tech would be not much different than any other profession that has been mechanized. The process I'm using to write music is it has a lot of stages. So first stage is basically just listen to music, listen to things and find things that I like or I think they have a special sound or unique sound, signature sound, something I that I haven't heard before, and and something that I can detect that there will be a lot of samples in it. Step two is to get these records and slice them into the smallest pieces I can think of. That could be a bass drum, that could be a snare, that could be a hi-hat, that could be a bass sound, that could be a synth, that could be a guitar, that could be a reverb between sounds, it could be anything, it could be ambience. Step three is process these samples using distortions and compressors and filters, and somehow try to extract the sound so that it's more noticeable, that the qualities are more noticeable, or the different qualities will come up. Some processes that I do just make the sound completely unrelated to the original sound. Not that you'd know, not that you'd notice, but there are. So now step four is indexing all of this stuff into folders on my sample bank. Step five is to use a tracker program to create loops using these samples. Now, what is a tracker? For the majority of people who don't know, a tracker is a kind of app where you can trigger samples at different pitch and different volume and different panning. That's basically all you can do. I'm using Milky Tracker, which is a remake of Fast Tracker 2, which is an MS-DOS program that I think was released in 1986. Nothing has changed in this new remake, nothing important. I like it because I'm used to it, and because I like how it mixes sounds together, which is very different than what modern applications do. So I create loops using these samples, and then I have, like, I don't know, tens, maybe hundreds of loops. And step six is to figure out which of these loops I can sing on in a way that I think would work. So I'm going over the loops one after the other, trying to sing if I only have one octave like to sing with. So and many of the loops I simply they don't work, and it's really difficult to change the pitch on a loop because this tracker app, the way it changes pitch, it makes the samples uh, play faster or slower, which means that the entire loop is messed up if you change the pitch. So I find the ones that I can sing on, and and they find like one word or one sentence that works on it. So the next stage would be stage 7 is to actually write lyrics, full lyrics, based on that. Now I want to write the lyrics before I go to the next stage, which is stage 8, which is recording the vocals, because every time I record, I get well, that will be clear in the next stage, stage 9, which is mixing it back, putting the vocal recording back into the tracker as a sample. Um, I'm usually also compressing the vocals and doing some EQ and limiting it. I want it to be very loud because it has to compete with the same loudness of samples that were already mastered. At that point, even though these are the recordings that work best, it doesn't really work on the loops as they were. I have to basically write the music again using these recordings, these vocal recordings, which is why I don't want to do the recording after I've reached this stage, because every time I do a recording of the vocals, then something else would work best with it. And so I'm trying to reduce the amount of iterations between like recording new vocals and writing new music. So that's the 10th stage is basically just finding the song, finding like how this works together. And this is like a lot of back and forth. It could mean writing new lyrics. It usually means throwing away a lot of lyrics, and there's a lot of lyrics that I throw away because not because it doesn't express what I think, but it simply doesn't work. Like my vocals don't carry it. It doesn't. I don't think it's good, and maybe it's also another way of telling me that the text itself is not good. But there's no way to tell. It simply doesn't work, so I don't. I throw it away. So then I have the songs written on Fast Tracker, but in this album I found that I had a problem with all my tracks. They sounded really bad, and I couldn't, even though they sounded really good when I worked on them on the tracker. I used these speakers that made it sound good, but it sounded awful everywhere else, and I understood I had to mix it again. So I had to write the songs again, and that was what I did basically in 2021 to 2022. And so the next process would be to break the channels from the tracker into logical channels. This sounds like something that should be trivial, but the thing is, when you're working with samples, there's no difference between the sample of a bass drum and the sample of your voice. It's just samples on a tracker. So you have to I have to separate it back to the logical channels. And that's step 11. And step 12 would be just mixing it using a standard DAW. You know, using all the regular stuff like EQ and compression and limiters and all that jazz. Yeah, and that's it. So that's all the stages. When I recorded the album, I used these studio monitors that I no longer use. I had them since 2004, something like that. And when I did the mixing, I switched to Neumann speakers with a sub, and I think I got like a better signal. I hope I did. I also used Sennheiser HD 600, I think. Yes, HD. Use native instruments, sound card, what it's called, Audio Complete 6, something like that, and SM38 microphone, like the most basic stuff. The working process is part of my art because I'm discovering the songs. I never, almost never, have a plan and I execute it, and then I get the song that I had in my head. It's usually that the song I have in my head is my worst enemy. It's the thing that I need to get rid of in order to discover the cool song that I couldn't think of. And this whole process where I'm using the samples by the fact that they have been created before I make the music, either by the band that I'm sampling or by my own processing. It brings with it textures and tunes that you might not be able to hear if you just listen to the origin of the sample, but it does exist in the sample when played over and over again. And then I discover a song that was never written but should be written now. And knowing where the samples came from, I can tell that this is me discovering something versus this was in the original song and I just copy that. And I don't want to copy that. I want to discover something new. So in that respect, it is part of the creation process, but it's not a semantic piece of it. Like there's no meaning. The way I use samples is just how I speak, just how I make music. It's not about, oh, this sample came from this and this sample came from that, so you should know that and then you will understand the music. I mean, that's not to say it's entirely not like that, but there are some examples where it is exactly that. But in these examples, you probably could feel that this is some kind of superimposed. When I do that, I want the listener to know something here is different, something here is out of place, and the reason it's out of place is so that you would take notice of it. And I won't tell you where that happens, but when it happens, you should be able to detect it. In other cases, where I'm not actually trying to tell you, okay, this sound is from that, and now that hints of what I meant in the song, then you wouldn't be able to detect it, and you shouldn't be able to detect it. And that's how I did it in this album. In Loki, there was one specific song, Drag Dogs in Vampire Suits, where it was all about people recognizing the origin. But that was one case where I used the samples in that way. Actually, in this album, there were more cases where I sampled myself. I wasn't happy with the sounds that I got from the origins. That I felt like I can discover something new by looping the sampling process again. And I guess there is a meaning behind it, and the meaning is that I'm trying to reinvent myself, basically. Uh, but you shouldn't be able to hear that. We did Nights in White Satin uh, after I've done a few of the first songs on The Golden Cage. At the time, I didn't have a name for the album. I didn't know I was making one. I was thinking maybe I'm gonna do another Demon Cast. Maybe these songs that I made for under ptyl. Maybe I'm not gonna release them at all. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. I don't remember why I remembered this song. This is one of the songs that I grew up. Uh, when I grew up, I remember that I never really knew who did it. Um, like who's the artist. I only learned that it's the Moody Blues when I was looking for the lyrics and looking for the original song to see exactly how it sounded, because I remembered was uh, just faded memory, faded childhood memory. And but the thing is, Ariel also likes it, and she said that when she was little, she would be afraid of the chorus because of that. It's so powerful and so it has this terror to it, which is kind of unique for songs from that era. So we decided to do it because we both liked it and we all of that. And once it was done, we also did a video for it in Tel Aviv in one of our visits back to Israel, and it was just sitting there, and we didn't really know what to do with it. And then when I was thinking about what will be on this album and what not will not be on this album, I uh, I thought, oh, maybe I should add it, and uh, then I thought I thought about the name that I found for the rest of this album, which is The Golden Cage, and I thought that it's kind of like I didn't know this at the time, but it's kind of the same thing. That there's something. The song is about not being able to express love, not being able to express anything. That's a cage, and the there's also this thing nice in white satin. This white satin thing sounds like kind of like luxury, something like golden cage. It's like the same, has the same something majestic to it in both cases. So I thought it was a good fit. Even though this is a solo album, I already had like songs that I didn't sing on my solo albums before, like in both in Hell Sounds and on Loki. So I figured, what the hell? Like this makes sense to me. And blaming the move uh, for making this album taking a long time, that doesn't make sense because this album is about the move. If I wouldn't have moved to San Francisco, I would never write this album. I might have written another album, but I don't know if it would have been better. Like, who knows? I don't know what the album is. Like, sometimes I have dreams of songs that I haven't written. Maybe this is the album that I could have written it had I not moved to San Francisco. But uh, this is what it is. So in that sense, this kind of question, I don't know what to do with it. But yes, it did take a long time, and there are reasons why. And the move has something to do with it, but not directly. Well, when you move to a different country, then you're taking a bet on the fact that this is not going to be a failure, and you're taking a financial bet actually, because if you decide to go back, then it becomes a bit inconvenient in terms of taxes and stuff like that. So you wanted to succeed, and we applied for a green card. And when you in this process, you are at the mercy of everyone basically. When they decide whether to give or not to give you a green card, you don't know what they're checking, like the government. You don't know the U.S. government. You don't know what they're checking, and you don't want to make any ripples. So in my mind, I was like, okay, let's play it safe. And when you play it safe, you can't. There's a lot that you can do. But not a lot of people heard what I was working on during that time, so I could basically say whatever I want, and nothing would happen of it. But I guess it's more like a psychological block when you're busy trying to not be seen as something that is one thing. Then it's hard for you to dive deep into the other thing that you're not showing. So even though you can write whatever you want, if you're not like living in a situation where really really trying hard to live a different life than the life you're living, then you just don't have the inspiration, and that's what happened for a long time. So I got the green card in 2019, and since then, I think the rate has picked up. But there's also the usual stuff. I'm trying to write music that I haven't written before, and maybe people don't hear it when they listen to my music. Maybe they do. I don't know. And it gets harder and harder to write the next song in a way that isn't repeating things that I've done because I still like the same type of music. So it's like a very like the area is not covered, becoming less and less. So writing each song can become a longer process. Uh, Also, up until this album, 2017, I was writing like for how long it was, like 5, 6 years. I was writing stuff for Demoncast, and in Demoncast, it was a band, so I didn't want to write about myself that much because I didn't feel like that's something that the band could unite around just me. It doesn't make sense. So I train myself to write about things that are not me, or not me, at least on the conscious level. And this created a debt that I had to pay for myself, like just to start facing myself in my music. And that was a process that required me to get acquainted with things that I have stopped doing, like again. And if I think about how many things happen, well, when most of your day is just writing software, not a lot, and writing about myself again became a bit of there was a bit of a learning curve. And also, there was a bit of a learning curve. What is there left for me to say? Uh, and it forced me to actually expose things that are not positive about myself, but repeatedly, because everything I just said about about life, it goes against who I think I was, or think I thought I was up until then, and this caused a lot of uh, it's kind of like an identity crisis in some way. So um, getting a grip on that is not trivial, and getting a grip on that without repeating myself is also not trivial. I'm guessing that the question is whether I have the right to complain uh, if I'm living in luxury. Like I don't think that hunger has ever been like a real issue anywhere around me. Like in terms of this, when I wasn't living in Tel Aviv, when I'm living here, when lived in Germany, uh, I saw a lot of poverty, but I never saw people that are, dying of hunger, unless they were junkies or something like that. Wars. So about wars, I'm also not so. I don't see it as a big difference. Like I've been in Israel. I- I've lived through several wars throughout my life. Whenever we go to Israel, somehow there's a war. I hope there won't be again. Um, we've had like suicide bombers and all that kind of stuff. People that I knew died there. Uh, but it was always kind of like you knew where the risks are, and at least that's how it felt. And in 2020, when there was the Black Lives Matter riots and looting in San Francisco, as well as in the rest of the U.S., it felt much scarier than anything that I felt before because I didn't have the way to scale to see that this can happen, this cannot happen. The pharmacy that I use got looted and basically destroyed and rebuilt. So and there was noises like guns and police and helicopters all the time, and this is on top of COVID and all every many other things. So I don't feel like war being not in war or in war. That's a big thing. But there is this issue of luxury, and yes, uh, to complain from when I'm standing, that sounds like I need a lesson in how hard life can be before I'm complaining. But the life I have right now gives me security for the future, in terms of financial security. But if I didn't need that, if I didn't need to think about how I will live when I'm older, uh, then um, I wouldn't need even a small portion of what I have now. Like I don't need it. So this excess is meaningless in that sense, and it doesn't make me that grateful to know that I'm getting this excess because this is the same reason that you drink alcohol and you smoke cigarettes, not thinking about the fact that this is gonna affect your health in 10 years. It's the same exact thing. It's not simply not tangible. That isn't to say that there's nothing to it, but just to say that it doesn't affect your mood or how you think about things. And you're not trained to look at these things that you attain by leveling up financially. You don't have like a tool to know what's important and what's not. You just know, oh, I got more, maybe I should keep it. So you do that, and then you neglect other pieces of you, which you wouldn't neglect if you didn't have the success, because you wouldn't have anything to protect. So you end up in situations which are not better. You're not happier necessarily, even if objectively you should be happier, but you're not. And so what does it matter? Like what does any of that matter? All this luxury matter? All this excess? What does it matter if all you are is a consciousness living this life? Everybody, like lots of people know this, but it doesn't just go in one direction. Like we are all equal. It's also goes in other direction of we're all screwed. There is something about the safety nets. I said that you end up, thinking about your future and you are paying a price in the present so that you'd have a better future, and that price is putting yourself in the golden cage. Uh, there is that, um, but it's completely automatic. You don't really understand what's going on, what's happening inside your mind while you're making, clearly logical decisions. So the golden cage is the outcome of making logical decisions. It's without really being connected to your emotions, uh, what you hold sacred. When you make decisions that say, okay, all of that, there's a time and place for that, but not now. Now, what we need to do is take care of money. Then you end up in the golden cage, I guess. But this is all just after the fact. When I wrote this album, I didn't have a concept. I didn't think about what I'm doing. I was just exploring my subconscious, I guess, and documenting it without really understanding where this will go or thinking about where this will go. It's not like I was really like enigmatic to myself. It's more like I didn't know what would be the next song. The same way I didn't know what would happen the next day during 2020. No one did. Um, so like songs like All In, I wouldn't have dreamed of writing, or gotta be shitting me, if the events that caused them wouldn't have happened, but they did. So it's not a clear cut. When you're young, really young, like a kid, there are lots of things that you're afraid of because they feel so big and you feel so vulnerable. And then you become less fearful as you become, get to your 20s. Um, you think that you tend to think that you're much more invincible than you really are. You tend to believe that you're gonna make an impact much bigger than you actually end up making. So you are fearless during that time, and then you start to see your failures or the things that you thought you're gonna make, you're gonna do, and you are not doing it, and you start to fear that you are actually a failure. And then when you get older, you start being not exactly 100% healthy, or you feel like this small thing and you don't know what it's about, and you know that people at this, let's say after 40, you know that people at this age are no longer invincible in general, so you think maybe that applies to you, maybe that, that pain in your back is the end of you, and bullshit like that. And then you become fearful. And there's also, if you're not a failure, if you're actually a success and you make, then you have more stuff, and now you're afraid of losing that. Before that, you didn't have anything to lose, so you didn't have anything to fear. And that doesn't have to be stuff. It could be family. It could be things that are more emotional. It could be status, things that you have uh, managed to prove to the world that you are worthy. And you're afraid that if you don't continue doing the things that you have done in the past, then you no longer be that. And before you were that, you never thought about what it would mean to lose it because it was never there to begin with. And whenever, usually it comes as some kind of surprise and makes you proud of yourself, like that you get it the first time. And after that, it becomes, you get accustomed to it, and then you're just afraid of losing it. And that also applies to status that you give yourself, like this kind of like you have when you're younger, you have like this ideas of what you're gonna be, and then you look at yourself, and if you remember what you thought you're gonna be, and you see who you really are, you're afraid of being a failure to yourself. Um, and yeah, so there's lots of reasons to be afraid. Not to mention the fact that as you grow older, you're also less focused on yourself, and then when you open up, what could potentially make you less fearful, if you all you do is listen to the news and listen to all the fear mongering that's happening outside, then you become fearful of that because of that. But it's not that you have to become more fearful. It's just that you get reasons to be fearful. In the beginning of 2021, I was fed up with myself for being so afraid of everything during COVID and making choices based on fear, based on the fact that I don't know what's going to happen and therefore I'm not going to do anything. And I got sick of it, and I decided that I'm not going to make decisions anymore where the only reason I'm doing or not doing something is because I'm afraid. There's no rational reason. It's just, you know, being afraid of bad luck that would happen just because I tried. And since then, well, I can't say that, my life changed a lot, but I don't feel this kind of shame and being afraid, which is good. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a choice. We're not becoming more afraid. We're becoming more vulnerable to fear. But that doesn't mean that that's where we have to end. This is just one option.